Ruin My Childhood.
You're listening to Ruin My Childhood, the podcast where we decide if some things are better left in the past. I'm Kat.
I'm Mike.
And what are we going to be watching and talking about today, Mike?
We're going to be talking and watching and talking about Tom and Huck.
Woo! Do you remember this at all?
I vaguely remember this. I've definitely seen it a couple of times. Obviously, JTT.
He's so dreamy.
The only thing I really remember is the funeral scene when he falls to the roof and then he sees Becky and he's like, "Hi, Becky," and then she decks him. And then I vaguely remember kids being covered in mud, but I have no context for that.
Got it. We actually own this on VHS in my household.
Brag.
Because my sister was so in love with Brad Renfro. R.I.P.
Alex?
Yes.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, jeez.
I already say you he did.
Yeah, I already say you he did. Yeah, very sad. He was actually a really good actor.
I looked him up on IMDb before we watched it, and I don't think I've seen him in anything other than Tom and Huck.
I remember him being good and stuff, but I don't know. I mean, it's been like a decade since I've seen him in anything, so maybe he was a terrible actor, and I'm just imagining this.
He died over a decade ago.
Seriously?
Yeah, it was 2008.
Holy cow.
Age 25.
Ugh.
Heroin, not even once, guys.
Yeah.
If there's anything you take away from this podcast, don't do heroin.
Yeah, don't do heroin. It's just bad news. Well, that's cheery. Do we have any listener
what do you remember
memories?
about it?
I pretty much that my sister was in love with him. I remember like the whole movie.
Oh.
Yeah. I probably I'm thinking there's very little that I don't actually remember from this. And there are characters that still kind of make my skin crawl. Like Muff Potter. He plays like Friar Tuck in some other film.
Yeah, he plays Friar Tuck in Robin Hood.
And I can just only remember him as Muff Potter. And so when I see him, I'm just like, ugh, he's so gross. He was also
the professor in Richie Rich.
Yeah, he's just so sweaty and slovenly and everything.
He's definitely
that's his
a
type.
character actor.
I mean, he's working more than I am, probably.
He's still working.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, geez, there's so much I remember about this. We probably watched this, like, if you average it out over the course of 5 years, we probably watched it once a month.
Damn.
We watched it a lot. It was on heavy rotation.
So one of the things I learned about this movie, because, you know, we do Trivia Tuesdays for the movies we're covering. Rachel Lee Cook was in this movie.
We do Trivia Tuesdays?
Yeah, on Instagram. Every Tuesday we do trivia about the movie we're covering that week.
You do trivia.
I do trivia on our social media. And Rachel Lee Cook was in this movie as Becky. I didn't realize that was her.
No, really?
Yeah, it was her feature film debut.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching this.
Me too.
I think it's going to hold up.
All right, well, should we get to our listener comments?
Sure. Shelly Thumbsucker said, "My fiance got me all JTT movies for Christmas. I just watched them all, including Tom and Huck recently. I love it. I fucking hated Becky."
Why?
Well, that's rather aggressive of you, Shelly.
Need to watch this, but I can't see Becky being that bad. Leroy GV777 says, "I love Rachel Lee Cook. Who doesn't? She's adorable."
She's adorable. Get to the Movie said, "Remember it coming out around the same time as The Adventures of Huck Finn with Elijah Wood and being a more 17/Tiger Beat version of that movie. Also Brad Renfro. Heart." Yeah, JTT and Brad Renfro are much better looking than Elijah Wood.
So the thing is, I looked this up. So Get to the Movies, friend of the podcast. I've been on their podcast a couple of times. Every one of those hosts have been on Remake Rewind at least once. So I'm assuming that this was Nick Gambino who posted this. Thanks, Nick. But I looked it up. The Elijah Wood one also was a Disney movie, just like this one, and came out 2 years earlier. So they did two Tom Sawyer movies within 2 years of each other.
That's odd.
It's super odd.
But it's Elijah Wood.
Yeah.
Like, not a lot of charisma happening there, ever.
Keep your secrets.
I worked with him. I worked with him recently. Zero charisma. He's very nice. Zero charisma.
Excellent.
Yeah.
How tall is he? Like 4'2"?
He was in a wheelchair. I'm serious.
So he's probably about the same height.
About 3.5 feet.
Chronic Princess in Pink. My love for JTT. Triple exclamation point.
I don't even know how to pronounce this. Hedrick 3916. when Tom accidentally showed up to his own funeral and fell through the ceiling at the perfect time. That was great.
That was great.
It was great timing. And that's it. Why is your knee touching me? It's sweaty. Get it away from me.
Sweaty and ready.
For what? It's a knee. So I guess we'll go watch this movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
This holiday season, the #1 name in entertainment, Walt Disney, presents the 2 biggest names in adventure, Tom and Huck.
I ain't scared of nothing.
They're after a fortune in gold and in a world of trouble. But for Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Brad Renfro, it's all part of the Disney fun. Disney's Tom and Huck, rated PG, now playing at a theater near you.
All right, we are back and we are pumped
So juiced.
it was kind of a long movie, so I'm actually not really
It wasn't
pumped.
a long movie. It was 92 minutes,
It
including
felt
credits.
long. You know what's weird, though? Maybe it's just because we're old and tired. Because I enjoyed it, but get your knee away from me.
We're sitting right next to each other, sharing one microphone.
That's
you
fine.
calm the
You can touch
down.
me with your shoulder. Your shoulder's closed, your knee is bare, and it is sticking to me. It is too hot. We
It's
live in
also
the valley.
sticking to the chair.
That's disgusting. So it wasn't a long movie, but it felt really long. And I think it's because they put so much into it.
I think the problem was actually they put too much at the beginning. I thought the first half hour or so was delightful.
It felt like an hour.
And then at the end of the movie, it really dragged, like with the whole when he finally tells the town that he knows who killed the doctor, and then the trial, and then the cave scene, like where he actually fights, Injun Joe. I think the climax of the movie took forever because I honestly really enjoyed the first part of the movie, but it's like once they witnessed the murder, it really slowed down.
Yeah, about that Joe character. Can we just get this out of the way? They call a character Injun Joe.
Yeah, it should be Native American Joe.
I mean,
PC, bro.
like, I get it. He was a literary. He was a work of literary fiction.
Hey, it's a good thing we didn't watch Huckleberry Finn because they have a character named N-word Jim.
Stop. It's terrible. But, at the same time, it's a product of its time, and I guess they weren't quite ready to be changing character names. Now, I don't know if that would fly if they made this movie today.
I think they just have to call him Joe. Yeah. But the thing is, we still have a football team called the Redskins. So, Make America Great Again. Let's bring back Injun Joe.
Okay, here's the thing, though. I feel like everyone who's super into the NFL is still, like, living under the rock of the Deep South. Like, let's be real. When you see the season, like, I don't even know what you call it when people are, like, swapping team members.
So the Redskins is in the Pacific Northwest.
It doesn't matter.
It's not a deep
NFL,
South
no, like, NFL is just a sport for mouth breathers. Like, it's modern day gladiators. When you think about it, when you think about the instance of, like, head injuries and what it does to these individuals, it's barbaric. Like, I make no excuses for the NFL. It's barbaric. It's like a modern day slave trade, especially when you see the lineup of all these young black athletes and their old white men, coaches, and team owners who are literally trading them. Like, the NFL is stuck in the Deep South.
Hey, the
no
NFL
matter how
has
you spin
white
it.
players. It's not the NBA.
Most of them are black.
Anywho,
It just looks bad.
let's get back to Tom and Huck.
I just think, like, we shouldn't be using the NFL as an excuse for anything.
Cat soapbox is over. We're heading back to Tom and Huck.
Giving you some realness. Yeah.
Should we summarize this film?
No, I'm not done with the Injun Joe
No,
thing.
we're done.
So the character's name is Injun Joe. Within, like, the first 15 minutes of the movie, at one point Tom Sawyer uses the phrase honest Injun, which, like, the phrase itself is very racist because
And he also wasn't honest.
It implies that an honest Injun is an exception to most Native Americans who are therefore dishonest. Like, did you have to include that in the script?
Hey, take it up with Mark Twain, a.k.a.
A
Samuel
racist.
Clemens.
He was a racist, okay? Mark Twain was a racist. He was right about San Francisco, but he was a racist. I love the weather in San Francisco. So do you want to do a summary?
Yeah, so if you don't know the story of Tom Sawyer,
Why are you talking like that?
if you don't know the story of Tom Sawyer, get a book, go to the library.
Read a book. Read a book.
Read a goddamn book. It's the story of Tom Sawyer, basically in a nutshell. They are going to a cemetery at night with a dead cat because they think it'll cure their warts. And they witness a murder, and they just... Murder. And they decided that they make a blood pact to not tell anybody about the murder. And then, meanwhile, the Indian Joe, Native American Joe, is trying to figure out who witnessed the murder, and they've just got to try to not get got. And yeah, that's pretty much the story.
Shenanigans ensue. You know what's interesting is...
What's interesting?
So Tom Sawyer has this moral dilemma of he knows that Indian Joe. Do we have to
just say Joe?
He knows
call
that
him Native American Joe.
Native American Joe.
N.A. Joe.
Where
Joe.
Where is this supposed to be set?
Nacho.
Like
Missouri.
So I need to look up.
It's the show me state.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
I don't know, but it's got to be dirty. Where does the show me state come from?
I don't know, but let's keep talking about the podcast.
Who are you texting?
Nobody. Dustin just texted me saying, okay, I'm just going to read this really quick. So Dustin, who fans of the show should know, is just texting me saying, I had the craziest dream. I dreamt we went to see the new Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Then in the movie, I was me, fat, bald Thor, and you were a fat Star-Lord.
Wow.
And I was flying all over hell trying to get the best space refreshments for your wedding.
We just had our 4-year wedding anniversary.
Yeah, just a couple days ago.
And it has permeated Dustin's dreams in the best way. All right, so the Native American groups in Missouri are, I don't think this is right, Missouria and Otoe? Oto. Is it Oto?
Oto.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oto.
Oto.
All right, so Oto Joe is like a homicidal maniac. Everyone knows he's no good. Like, he's got a reputation around town.
He's the best knife fighter in the area.
So Tom Sawyer has this moral dilemma that Huckleberry Finn just does not have.
He's got to live up to the Rush song.
Tom Sawyer has this moral dilemma. They see the murder happen. They know that Muff Potter didn't do it. Muff Potter
Where
goes...
did he get the name Muff?
Again, everything about this story is just a little bit dirty. So they're in the show me state of Missouri. And where was I going with this? So Tom Sawyer has this moral dilemma. They saw the murder. They don't want Muff to go down for it.
You know what they say about Tom Sawyer, right?
I don't know.
He was a modern day warrior. Mean stride.
Why are you
Today's
touching
Tom
me?
Sawyer.
You're like
mean pride.
leaning on me. So I just looked it up, and the show me state means this phrase has several origins. One is popularly ascribed to a speech by Congressman who is on the roof right now.
That's the cats fighting. Stop it! Stop it! Noah's mind is not for rent to any god or government.
What on earth?
It's Tom Sawyer by Rush.
I think we need to start over.
No.
So the show me state means, it says this phrase has several origins. One is popularly ascribed to a speech by Congressman Willard Van Diver in 1899, who declared that I come from a state that raises corn and cotton. Cockleburs, Democrats. What's a cocklebur? And frothy eloquence neither convinces nor satisfies me. I am from Missouri, and you have got to show me. Show
that was
you
a long tangent.
Show you
for this.
what, Willard?
Anyway, let's get back to the movie that we watched.
Oto Joe has a reputation for being a weird, scary dude who can throw a knife really well.
Should we call him Nah Joe?
What does that mean?
Native American Joe.
No.
You don't even know that he's Ojo. That's racist. What if he traveled? He's a criminal. It's not inconceivable to think that he's moving from town to town, state to state.
I don't
You're just
care.
making assumptions. I'm not calling him Oto Joe.
Native American Joe.
Nah Joe.
Has a bad reputation. Tom and Huck see the murder happen. Huckleberry Finn is like, no, I'm too wrapped up in my head and my own existential crises
he's a vagrant.
To be concerned with Muff Potter. Whereas Tom Sawyer's like, you know, it's not really okay for him to go down for this crime. I don't feel like if Tom Sawyer came forward with the information he had about the crime the night that it happened, that no one would have believed him.
So the problem is and this is where I both like the movie and disliked it at the same time. I don't want to say I disliked the movie, but I thought the first half hour of the movie was great with all his little like shenanigans that he got in. So the beginning of the movie, he's running away to go be a riverboat captain in Louisiana, and they lie. He does this whole lie with his cousin, who in the book it's actually his half brother, but in the movie it's his cousin.
Oh.
Where he puts a jar with a tarantula on his cousin's chest and says, if you knock the jar over, it will break. This is the most poisonous spider in the world. Kind of thing. Like, he has this guile and this charm. And then, the classic scene where he tricks all the kids into whitewashing the fence for him. Mm-hmm. And he also gets marbles out of it. So not only does he get them to do the work, he gets paid. So you see that at the beginning of the movie. And you even see when he gets in trouble for being late to class, he tricks the teacher, and instead of getting a whooping, he tricks the teacher into letting him sit with the pretty girl, Becky, as a punishment. He's like, no, please don't make me sit with the girl. And then he gets to sit with his crush, and he gives her an apple. So you see this at the beginning of the movie, his this like rogue-like quality, and then it just goes away. And you don't really see that for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's like he can charm the pants off of Hillary Clinton in the beginning, and then he's just like this little pushover the rest of the time. It doesn't make any sense.
And he's like constantly afraid. He's running away. He doesn't. I felt like the character was great. We got this great introduction to him, and then I felt like the character by the end of the movie wasn't the same character.
Right. You know what's interesting too? So like JTT, obviously very charismatic, which is why he was such a successful child actor. I thought his performance, obviously he was the strongest performer in the film. Brad Renfro, I feel like Brad Renfro didn't get a lot of scenes that showed his range. It was all just very like surly and
he only
serious.
ever had like one line at a time.
Right. All the adults in this film were like, 90% of the adults in this film were terrible.
They were just using their regular voices.
It's so strange. Like, only the kids could get the accent down, although Becky didn't really try.
You know why?
Why?
Because they've been acting their whole lives.
It's so sad and true. Oh, God. Yeah, especially like that first scene, the doctor. I did kind of appreciate that we got to see the doctor like arguing with a corpse at the beginning.
Trying to make it smile.
Trying to get him to smile, which was a little strange. But yeah, it was really lopsided in terms of performances. You got really strong performances from the child actors, which is unexpected. Even like the worst of the child actors were still
charming. Yeah,
Sid, I don't know who played cousin Sid, but he was still charismatic and goofy enough that you really liked him.
Yeah, you just saw him as like a goofy little kid.
Yeah.
It was a little adorable.
Who directed this?
I don't care.
Like, this is some, like, the child actors, you'd think that this was directed by Chris Columbus, because he can get the best performances out of kids. I just thought that was really lopsided. Rachel Lee Cook, on the other hand, has the exact same face that she has had.
She's all that.
She probably has the exact same face now. She looks exactly the same, just she was smaller.
Right. Can I just say how violent this movie was?
It is. For a kid's film? Holy cow.
It's super violent. So, like, the beginning of the movie, the murder, you don't see blood, but you see Joe, his hand going up and down several times with each stab.
Yeah.
Tom gets punched in the face a couple of times.
Like, I'm surprised they didn't have blood splatter fly onto them.
That's the only thing that was missing.
Right.
But there is points where, like, they get hit in the face and, like, he's bleeding from the face, like, towards the end of the movie.
PG-13?
No, this was just G, I think.
I think if this came out today, this might be PG-13 because of the murder and the violence.
No, because I think we're more liberal now with the ratings. Like, look at The Dark Knight. That really
that was PG-13?
That was PG-13.
Oh.
So
that's surprising. That's a disturbing movie.
It's super disturbing. So yeah, there's that. There's, at the end of the movie, they're constantly talking about how much of a knife fighter this guy is. Joe ends up killing his partner as well, who's helped him find the treasure. There's a point where he is fighting two children in a cave with a knife. Like, it's a super violent movie.
It really is.
I was surprised. I didn't expect that.
Even the playful stuff is kind of violent. Like,
yeah, they're constantly pushing each other off of bridges.
Right. When Becky's flirting with Tom, she just walks by and shoves him off a bridge. He could have been killed.
Yeah, he lands right next to these giant rocks. And then for whatever reason, Huck is just down there and he's like, what are you doing down there?
Smoking a pipe.
Yeah, smoking a pipe. And Tom's like, what are you doing down here? He's like, I'm looking for jackasses. He's like, under a bridge? He's like, I found one. I thought that was clever. I did like that.
I still remember that line. Found one, didn't I?
Right. You know the other thing? What is with Huck and dead cats?
Yeah, he's a dark child. You know, I think I hate to say this. I think he's got a little bit of brain damage going on.
Well, I mean, he had a violent upbringing. His dad trained him to be a knife fighter.
He did. You know what's interesting that they don't really address in this? So we learn later, like towards the end of the film, that he knows that Native American Joe is a great knife fighter because his father was the best knife fighter out there. And he trained Joe. He also trained Huck. Now, in the beginning of the film, you find out that Huck doesn't want anything to do with Native Joe. And you know that he's scared of him, but he never elaborates on it.
I feel like Joe must have killed his father.
Yeah, and it's weird that you never really address that. Now, with how sullen Huck is through the rest of the film, like he is sullen almost the entire time.
Until the very end when he gets adopted.
Yeah, you're kind of wondering, you're left wondering what it was that happened to him.
Well, and they mentioned that at the beginning of the movie that him and Tom used to be friends, and then Huck kind of became like an outsider, and now it's the thing that you get a whooping for, hanging out with Huck. And then he goes, well, we used to be friends, we could be friends again, so... You know, something happened that made him an outsider within the town.
Well, also, like, why was he not taken in by anyone?
Exactly.
Like, he was orphaned, and they just let him wander off on his own.
I don't understand that. But yeah, he has this weird fascination with dead cats. So at the beginning of the movie...
He's a disturbed child.
He talks about how he has a wart and he wants to get rid of it. And, you know, he mentions he has a dead cat in a sack. And he goes, oh, yeah, what you have to do is you have to take it to the cemetery, and then you have to, like, put it over your shoulder, and then you have to, like, bury it and yell at something. Yeah, you have to yell at like a demon or something like that, right? But then later on they're talking about Joe, and he goes, we can't tell anybody about this because if Joe will kill us, he says killing us would mean less to him than drowning a bag full of cats. Right. What is with him and cats? I don't know,
but he's a disturbed child, and I feel like they must have had more to this character that got edited out, because I don't think they would have let him be such a one-dimensional character.
Right.
You know?
It is strange. I did like the scene when Tom proposes to Becky. I thought that was really cute.
He uses a doorknob.
And then he says, you know, to get engaged, you have to say I love you and do a kiss. And, you know, when he says, you know, you have to kiss, Becky lights up. Like, she looked adorable. Mm-hmm. And then they do this whole thing. They each say they love each other. And he mentions that the last time he got engaged, and then she gets really upset, and then she goes off and says, like, she's like, I'm not your first, and he goes, well, no, that was ages ago. That was 2 months ago. And then she's like, I hate you, Tom Sawyer.
You know, it is kind of sad, though, that they use an engagement ring, because engagement rings didn't really happen until the 1930s, and This was, well, it was written in 1876.
I think there was engagement rings, but it wasn't like diamonds like it is now. Like, I think engagement rings were still a thing.
Although, you know, having watched this story, I kind of understand why this book was banned. It's not really a kid's book.
No, it's not.
It's
you're not supposed to read it until like high school, at least in California.
Really?
I didn't read Tom Sawyer. We read Huckleberry Finn in, I want to say, my sophomore year, maybe freshman year.
But it's definitely not like. I think I read this when I must have been like 3rd or 4th grade. And I definitely remember it being, I don't want to say racy, but like there's a lot of stuff in there that definitely puts some weird ideas in kids' heads.
It's a different time.
Now, I don't remember if the scene where he's trying to propose to Becky is in the book.
So apparently most of the stuff is pretty close, and there's different versions of the film. So like, this film changes a few things, like like I mentioned, the half brother is now the cousin in this. There's only one murder in the book and other versions of the film, but in this one there's 2. The other thing is, I guess, that haunted house scene towards the middle of the movie when the bad guys actually find the treasure. Mm-hmm. They like end up thinking there's a ghost because they pick up the guy's hat with a fishing hook. Mm-hmm. That isn't in any other version or any other movie version, but it's in this, but it is from the book.
Got
So
it.
there are some differences, but apparently it follows the book pretty closely.
Got it.
So one of the other big issues I have is when Tom finally agrees to like fess up, it's at the actual trial. And the whole town was going to kill Muff without a trial until like the judge shows up and is like, "What are you guys doing?" But Tom shows up last minute and Joe ends up flinging a knife. He picks up a Bible and barely like catches the knife beforehand, and then Joe jumps out the window and runs off, and everyone's like, "Tom's a hero." Like, he's a hero for this, right? And then they have this big celebratory picnic, and they have Muff is telling stories and hanging out with the kids and playing with them, and then they let Muff take the entire village worth of children into a cave. And I'm thinking the whole time, like, yeah, he might not have murdered somebody, but he's still a grave robber.
Right.
Like, this whole murder thing happened because they were digging up a grave to find a treasure map.
Right.
And this grave had a body in it.
So this scene in the cave is actually pretty scary.
Yeah.
Like, objectively, it's a scary scene. Like, there's a lot of action. The end is a little hokey. But, it reminded me, like, the scenes in the cave, it reminded me of this cave that I went to when I went to my friend's wedding in Northwest Arkansas, which is basically Missouri. And it was just interesting going through that cave and having the tour guide tell me about it. I had a tour by myself because it's Northwest Arkansas. So we went into this cave. I think it was called like the Spaniards Treasure Cave or something like that. And it looks exactly like this cave that the entire town goes into in this story. And when I was down there in real life, I was like hearing about how they still have all these town functions in the cave.
Weird.
Because it's like this historical hub of, it's not even a town, it's just the Ozarks.
Right.
And she was telling me that they take all the Boy Scouts down in there to camp all the time. I'm like, that would be terrifying as a child, knowing that people had like lived and died in this cave.
Right.
There was actual treasure involved. There's actually supposedly treasure in this cave that everyone is still looking for. She was showing me where they dig for it. But yeah, I was thinking this is some genuine redneck stuff. And seeing it in the film just kind of like reaffirmed that.
There was like a
notion.
bottomless pit in this cave.
There was. It was very strange.
And one of the things that bothered me about this whole cave scene, and it's nitpicky, but I'm going to point it out. So there's a point where, Becky and Tom go off on their own, and they're, they're yelling and making
Becky's
echoes.
being a brat.
And, and the cave starts to cave in a little bit because of the sounds, and Tom's like, "Hey, knock it off. Like, we're going to die because you're going to make the cave." And she's like, "No.
No. They're in the river.
Okay. So then it just happens to be that Joe's hanging out in that cave because it also happens to be the cave where they stash the treasure. Joe starts chasing them around.
That's such an obvious place to stash treasure.
So Joe is chasing them around, and they end up going through this like little nook, and Becky's struggling to get through it, and Tom has to like push her through. But then like as they get through, you see Joe reaching through, and his whole body could fit in that opening.
He definitely half-asses trying to grab them.
So then he like followed, and you can see it's like stalactites are on the ground, right?
I don't remember.
Stalagmites are on the ground,
I was
right?
just in a
Right.
cave in Northwest Arkansas, and I don't even remember.
You see him like following. You can see them crawling through like essentially a tunnel, but you can see them, and he's just following them. And there's several more openings that are big enough for him to get in there, and he doesn't.
It's a pretty easy win,
and then
he biffs it.
He's like fighting Tom, and then Huck shows up and helps them, and they end up like tricking him into getting near the bottom or near the edge of the bottomless pit.
How did Huck know where they were?
He was following them.
At that much of a like it took him so long to get involved. Like, how closely was he
I don't
following?
know. But anyway, they're fighting, and then somehow, right as Joe is gonna kill Huck, Tom is like, "I've got the treasure. Come and get the treasure." And they're fighting over the treasure, and then the guy falls over with the chest, and then they're like, "Oh my God, you let go of that treasure." He goes, "Actually, I couldn't pick up the chest." And then you see in the pit, all the gold from the treasure chest is there. If he couldn't pick it up, how did he pick it up to dump it all out like that? And how did he do it in the amount of time that they were just wrestling with each other and not have Joe hear him messing with the treasure?
Right, he would have heard it at least getting dumped out.
It was like seriously like 5 seconds. Like they were only wrestling for a good 5 seconds, and he gets all this done. And then they have the treasure, and then because he has treasure, the old woman decides to adopt Huck. And then he's all, a little like dandy boy after that.
He is. So the old woman, she's a widow, I guess. I don't remember
Yeah, she's
the
a widow.
character's name.
They just call her
the widow. The widow sort of appears like 3/4 of the way through the film, and somehow we're supposed to take her as like this authority figure.
Well, no, she shows up throughout. Every time there's like a moral dilemma for the town, she shows up. So at the beginning of the movie, when they were just gonna hang Muff, she was like, I'm no fan of his, but he's gonna get a fair trial.
Yeah, but that was pretty far through the movie.
Yeah, like the first half hour.
I don't think so. I think she just kind of shows up out of nowhere, and we're supposed to like respect and fear
she's
her.
old as hell back then to live that long. You did something right.
Yes. But then she like shames Huck because now he has money. Well, what are you gonna do with your life, boy? Let me adopt you. It's just weird. It's really weird. And like, why did no one care about Huck before then?
Because he wasn't a hero back then. He was a vagrant.
She's a gold digger.
I ain't see her with no broke.
Oh, wow. My last note that I wrote is, what the F is that hole?
Right. Bottomless pit.
The bottomless pit, it goes on forever. It's like
you never hear anything hit.
It's like something you'd see in The Mummy.
Right. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And then the movie ended on a freeze frame.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very 90s.
I did like we didn't even talk about the funeral scene. It's famous. You don't really need, it's in every version of Tom.
Was that your favorite scene?
It's really the only thing I remembered, but I did like how Becky like decked him when he like falls through, because she's mentioning like, oh, I wish I could really see him. I told him I hated him the last time, and if I could, I would kiss him in front of the entire town. And then Huck pushes him, and then he falls through the roof, and he's just like, hi, Becky, and whack.
Becky is mercurial. So she kind of like treats him pretty badly. And then when they're by themselves, it's like she's likes
a Sour
him.
Patch Kid.
She likes him, but she doesn't want anyone else to know she likes him.
Yeah. Well, he's also like 3
Rude.
feet tall.
It's rude. Yeah, that would explain it. She doesn't want to be ridiculed. I mean, like, girls that age are generally like 6 inches taller than guys the same
but
age.
she was like 2 feet taller.
Poor JTT. He's still so short. I think one of my favorite scenes, though, is when, not the time she pushes him off the bridge, but when they're on the bridge and he gives her the doorknob, the rise and fall of their relationship in the span of about 30 seconds is adorable.
It was really sweet. Like, she lit up, and they both, like, they actually had some really good chemistry as children. I did by that. I honestly didn't think Brad Renfro and Tom really had that good a chemistry. But they also didn't give Brad Renfro that much to do.
They didn't. And again, like, I think there was more to that character, and they must have cut it because he's just very sullen and dark the whole time.
Yeah, and this is a kids movie, and Disney always kept those movies like under 100 minutes. They were always
like
in the 90s.
A disturbed child.
I mean, he is a disturbed child.
Oh, it's so sad. It's sad. And, it is sad watching it in this context and recognizing that he probably was a deeply unhappy child, and there probably was horrible stuff that happened to him because he was, on film sets, unfortunately.
Yeah, he was a heroin addict.
Yeah, a film set is no place for a child. It's not a good environment at all.
Drew Barrymore survived, but she had a rough childhood.
Yikes.
Robert Downey Jr., he struggled.
Yikes. Yeah.
Those are the exceptions, though.
Pretty much.
All right, well,
on that note,
did this ruin your childhood?
Oh, there was one more note that I had. It was interesting how Native Joe became more animalistic the further you got into the film. Like, for the most part, he was just kind of like this hulking hothead who was a little bit dumb. But then further through the movie, and it made him more scary, he kind of seemed like he was using his other senses to find them and to fight with them, rather than just
he's just busting through windows like Michael Myers by the end of the movie.
Yeah, like, rather than just throwing knives and that being the threat, it's like, oh my god, he can smell us.
Which is weird because they couldn't see him. Like, he must have been drunk or whatever, because like they wore mud like in the Predator as camouflage, and like they're totally visible. It just happened to be that he was drunk and his vision was blurry, that he didn't notice them.
I guess.
But yeah, they
don't give a lot of context for why he couldn't see them.
There was a distillery right behind them, like a moonshine distiller right behind him.
So he was just that drunk?
I think he was just that drunk, because like when he wakes up, his vision was like, not only was it double vision, it was like blurring and panic. It was like if you were to take, like the classic thing in movies where someone's looking through binoculars and you see two circles.
Yeah.
It was like that, and they would overlap and then make like a Venn diagram kind of thing and then go separate. So I think it was supposed to be implied that he was drunk AF.
Yeah, this movie had it all. It had binge drinking, it had racism, it had grave robbing, some like the doctor fighting with a corpse. Like, bottom line, this is not a children's movie.
Nah, not really.
It's not.
I mean, it's all, everything's implied.
Was it enjoyable?
I would say the first half hour, 45 minutes was very enjoyable. I found everyone to be charismatic. I do think it fell off in the middle. Like, once the murder happened, I thought the hijinks weren't that great. Like, even the scene in the haunted house where they use like the fishing rod to try to steal the treasure map and they end up stealing his hat.
Scene.
I thought that was too hokey.
I thought it was fun.
Yeah. Well, different strokes for different folks.
Clearly.
On the whole, I enjoyed the movie, but I do think it was stronger in the first half.
Definitely.
But did it ruin your childhood?
No, I think
it was better than I thought it was going to be.
It just, like, it felt a little long. I think it's the adults that ruin it for me.
Right. I think, like, after we watched I'll Be Home for Christmas, that movie wasn't very good.
It was terrible.
And I was just like, oh, maybe JTT wasn't good.
He was good.
And I thought this movie I thought it was enjoyable.
Even if he couldn't act, and I think, like, he was a child actor in the 90s, and he did a lot of Disney. So if you're holding him up with those standards in mind, he was a good actor, considering where he came from. But he was also so charismatic.
He was.
That he could be even worse of an actor, and we'd still kind of excuse it.
Right, like in I'll Be Home for Christmas.
Right.
He was not good in that one. That was a Disney movie. He did a couple other ones, like he did Man of the House, which is another Native American themed one. The Boy Scouts in that one are called like Indian Scouts or something like that. But anyway, I think we talked this one to death. What are we covering on our next episode?
Bring it on.
Bring it on.
Oh, it's already been broughten.
Is that from a spoof or is that actually in the movie?
I don't remember. Yikes.
I'm looking forward to watching that movie. It was a fun movie.
It was a fun movie.
All right. Katrina, where can our listeners find you?
I'm all over the internet at Katrinaosity.
Check out her YouTube. Check out our YouTube. Links and everything in the description for the episode. Check out everything that's MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Instagram's probably where we do most of our social media. Check us out on patreon.com/MDXpods if you want to support the show. And you know what? This is based off a book. Oh, excuse me. Maybe check out audibletrial.com/MDXpods and get a free 30-day trial and a free book on us. Check it out.
You can cancel the trial if you don't like the service and you get to keep the book.
It's pretty tight.
Yeah, you can keep Tom Sawyer forever. Enjoy it in all of its racist glory.
And check out Rush, great Canadian rock band.
Why?
Because they have a song called Tom Sawyer.
Oh, God.
Did you not get all my Rush jokes throughout this episode?
I think anyone who has not already discovered Rush need not discover Rush at this point.
I actually really only like that one song.
Because it's Rush.
Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody.
I love you.
I love you too.
Bye.